Okay, guys, so the presentation topic is discover how to use material planning the right way, all whilst using in the BC. First of all, let me check. Can you hear me loud and clear? I hope. Maybe just
yeah.
Yeah, great. Can you see my screen as well? Can you see it clear? I'm sharing one of my screens. Hopefully you can see that. The planned time for this presentation is probably about 30 minutes. Please don't hesitate to put any questions in the chat. I will try to answer them when it comes to it, but we should have time in the end of the session as well. Okay, so first of all, hello. I will tell you quickly something about myself. So I'm working for Techman 6 years. I have more than 10 years experience with NAV and BC. My focus is mainly manufacturing, warehousing, and implementations, which kind of have a close link to this topic of planning materials and inventory within your system. So that's quickly about myself. What we're going to cover within this presentation. So what we will cover in this presentation. So we will cover typical scenarios for the beginning. As I mentioned, I'm doing this for a while. So what I can see throughout different implementations are the patterns and repetitive things which potentially could have been avoided if something would have happened. Yeah, so we will cover typical scenarios. We will go through the quick planning process improvements as well. As you're aware, devil is always in the detail. Small improvement can make a huge difference, another way around. So that's another thing to look at. Third thing we will look at is the recent business center enhancements, which are related to this topic. So as you could see during the keynote, there is a lot of things going on within the BC functionality. So we will just discuss some of these which are related to it. And then we will also discuss some visualization options and integrations which can be done related to the planning, inventory planning agenda. Okay, so let's go on the typical scenarios first. Okay, so I'm sharing now on my screen typical scenario number 1, and it's we bought too much. That's something I'm seeing quite often. You would be surprised. Picture hopefully made you a bit laugh, and that's what I really can see quite often. So what this brings to the company is cash flow implications. Obviously, you know, if you load your warehouse by material, there will be a cost which will have to be covered at some point of time. I've seen one customer which said that we bought too much that we couldn't even afford to pay wages. So that's the real life scenarios which really can happen. Yeah, a lot of times what's the problem is lack of understanding of the system. Okay. Yeah, so when we speak about the scenario, it's again a limited space in the warehouse as well. So we have a space constraints which can be caused by this problem. But overall, in general, when we can, we should stick to some kind of just-in-time principles. So I will try to explain what the just-in-time principles could mean and how they can be implemented within BC. Okay, so that's scenario number 1. So what do we do to avoid this scenario? Okay, so one of the things we can do is to utilize something called reorder policy, for instance, maximum quantity. So what I will do now is I will dive in within the BC, and I will show you what the reorder policy are and what the options are and how we can utilize the system. So what I'm showing on the screen now is a fictitious item card. Yeah, what we can see here on the planning tab is field called reorder policy, and that basically specifies your supply chain and how do you approach reordering of this item. So how often you purchase, what are the batches, what are the order multiples, etc., etc. So to avoid loading your warehouse by something you don't need, you can use one of the reorder policies called maximum quantity. Yeah, and what this does, let me show you the next screen. Okay. What this does is that when you set your maximum inventory, system will try to reorder to top up to maximum inventory, which is specified on the item card. Yeah. So what I'm showing here on the scheme is that we can see on the left-hand side my inventory profile, my inventory level. In the bottom, we can see the timeline. Yeah. So here is my projected inventory balance. Yeah. So I will run out of material at some point, but there is something called reorder point. So let me just explain what reorder point is. So that's moment within your inventory profile when system will suggest you to order more, reorder material. Yeah. So if we look at the item card again, so I'm on the planning tab. So my maximum or reorder policy is set to maximum inventory. Yeah. And as we can see, some fields are grayed out because they are not used on this tab. So my scenario here is if you go below 50, then reorder or top up to 200. Yeah. So that's what's described here on the screen. So let me now show you example of that. So if I will just quickly run planning worksheets, we'll go to the system, run planning worksheets. We will discuss the process in a bit, but I just want to show you the example that if I show you the calculation of the plan, I will plan it from today. I will run it till the end of the year, and I will run it only for one of my items. It will happen. System is now suggesting me to top up stock to 200. And if I just show you some additional information, so my configuration is if you have below 50, just top up to 200. And because I have no stock, it's suggesting to reorder 200. And we have here some additional information on it. Okay, so let's come back to other options we've got. So again, as I've mentioned, the key thing is to understand system and utilize configuration we have available. Yeah. So if we want to avoid situation, as I've shown on the screen, I will show it again. Yeah. Then we could utilize and use maximum inventory to just reduce stock down. Okay, so let's go on the other option we've got. Just to put some more information on this reorder policy, this can be applied if your inventory profile is predictable. So for instance, you know how much you consume weekly, you know how much you consume monthly, you know how much you sell. So you can calculate your reorder point and calculate reorder quantity. Yeah, so if it's predictable, then you can put figures in and system will just execute what you specify or configure in there. Okay, let's go on to the next option. So I've shown you the item card. So we will go on the item card again. Next reorder policy we will discuss is lot for lot. So what that means. I will just open up the item card. There's a reorder policy lot for lot. And it means that system accumulates your demand within lot accumulation period and suggests you only one replenishment. So I will show you this on the screenshot. Okay, so we're running the plan. Okay, we have lot accumulation period set, and system will basically accumulate everything within this accumulation period and suggest one replenishment order. Yeah, so that's very often and commonly used reorder policy. The advantage of this reorder policy is that you don't need to have the data about average consumption and average usage and your lead times. You can just start quickly and efficiently with some planning within the system. So let me show you the example on the screen. So what I've got is the item which has reorder policy order and lot accumulation period 1 month. Let's look at the data we've got in the system. So we have quantity on sales orders 20. We can see that there are 2 different sales orders for 2 different dates. Okay, so when I run a plan for this item, what will happen is that system will accumulate whole demand within 1 order and create replenishment. So let me just calculate the region plan again. Okay, I will calculate it just for lot. Okay, and what we can see here is suggestion. The suggestion is to purchase 20. Okay, Y20, we can go to item availability screen to give us some indication why. So if I go to item availability by event, system will give me breakdown Y20. And we can see here that there is one sales order for the 10th of December, and there is another sales order for the 15th. Okay, and we can see here that there is some planning suggestion to replenish for the beginning of this, or for the first occurrence of the demand within lot accumulation period. Okay, there are some additional attributes we can use in conjunction with lot for lot. So it will be typically batch sizes, so order multiple, minimum order quantity, maximum order quantity, etc., etc. So let me just show this on the screen. Yeah, so when we speak about the lot for lot configuration, all of these order modifiers, minimum, maximum, order multiple, can be applied, and that's what you then can see in the plan. Rounded, applied order modifiers. Okay, so let's go back on the presentation. So that was lot for lot. There is one more reorder policy, or two more reorder policies. So it's the order reorder policy. So what this is doing is it kind of create back-to-back relation between supply and demand and reserve these two documents together. Yeah, so we can see here on the screen that we have 3 sales orders here. And system will suggest me to replenish every single demand by separate order. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at the example. If I just go on the item list. Item list, there is item prepared with the reorder policy order. Yeah. That's the reorder policy order. And as we can see, some of additional fields we have used in the previous examples, they are grayed out. And it means that they are not applicable for reorder policy order. Okay, so let's have a look at the data, what we've got. I have quantity on sales order 15. I have 2 different sales orders here for the same item, and they are even for the same date. Yeah, that's key difference here, that when I run a plan, it will suggest me to create 2 different orders. Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's run it. Let's go to planning worksheets. Let's go to calculate region plan. I will run this only for my item order. And what we will see is 2 suggestions for the same day. Yeah, with a quantity which is kind of back-to-back order to my demand. Yeah. So what's the key here? What's the key bit is that you can categorize items and apply different policies or on different group of items. And that's where the strength of the planning system is coming from, that based on our inventory, we can apply different strategy against them. And we will come back to it in a bit. Okay, so that was the first very common pattern. We bought too much. Yeah, and as I've highlighted, I will just show it again. Yeah, that's something which really happens quite often. And the key thing is the understanding of the system and its possibilities. Okay, so just quickly, so if we have this scenario that we bought too much, what we should have applied is kind of approvals or workflow scheme where certain users can buy only to certain value or this kind of thing. So that's something which should be considered as well. Okay, so that was first scenario. We bought too much. What's the second scenario? Let's go ahead. It will be the opposite. We ran out. So I have here quite funny screenshot. So that's this one, Houston. We have a problem. Yeah, so you would be surprised how often this happens. You know, I've had this a lot of times. We've run out. We have a lot of shortages. We need to modify system to don't let us change production order to release without having material. We have, you know, sales orders we can't share because we haven't planned production. That's something which happens really often, and the impact of it is customer satisfaction implications and obviously added cost. Yeah. So what do we do about it? There are some options within the planning process. And the first one is just to improve the planning process. So what do I mean by that is that you should segment and kind of diverse your planning process into small batches, which you can execute more frequently. So for instance, you can run sales order check daily. What do I mean by that? So let me show you the system. So I'm showing my planning worksheets. I will go to calculate region plan, okay? And as I mentioned, we should stratify, classify, and categorize our product portfolio that we can run plan only for things we need. Yeah. So let's come back now to this sales order check. So you can filter the items. So what you easily can do, calculate me plan only for items which are on the sales orders. So quantity on sales orders is greater than 0. Yeah. And if I run a plan from today till the end of next month, only for items which are on the sales orders, what you will get is the answer which sales orders need some replenishment or what do we need to consider. Yeah. So if you run this daily in the morning, just tell me which sales orders needs attention, then this can give you quite beneficial information, which can then drive another discussion within the company. Yeah. And it doesn't need to be purchaser. If I want to run my daily sales order check, it can be anybody within company which is responsible for these data. Yeah. So sales order check, very similar thing is production order component check every morning. Yeah. So same as we have filtered for only sales items which are existing on the sales order, in exactly the same way, we can filter only for items which are in production on the production order components. So if I go to quantity on production components, production order components, component lines, I can execute exactly same logic. So give me only these which are on the components, and I can put additional filter on it where inventory is 0. So tell me where I have a problems with production items which are in production and don't have a stock. You can run it, and it will then just give you suggestions based on the data you've got in the system. Okay, so that's the daily checks you can do just to stratify and limit amount of data you want to look at. Yeah, you probably don't need everyday full regenerative plan. You can just look at the data which should be maintained and reviewed on daily basis. Okay, so what else we can do if we've run out? So the key thing is understanding of what system is suggesting. Yeah, what I'm meeting a lot of people which using the system, and what I hear constantly is we don't understand what system is trying to tell us. Yeah, and that's the key thing where it should be other way around. We should understand the system and just modify or tweak configuration to follow our expectation. Yeah, system doesn't know what the item is. We need to tell him or tell the system what should be the supply chain, how often we purchase, what are the batches, and who we purchase it from, or who is the potential other suppliers. So, and to this understanding of the system is key understanding is about messages which system is trying to give you in the field, which is called warning. So I will just go back to the system. So I'm in the planning worksheet, and there is a field warning, and this field can show you up to 3 different warnings. And what I came up so far from my experience, nobody from the customers really understands them. And that's why key, because these shortages and these too much inventory can be coming from fact that system is trying to tell us, but we do ignore it. Yeah. So let's have a look. So there are 3 options. I will show you all of them. So we will start with what is the emergency. Okay. So I will go to BC. And I will run a plan for item, which I have prepared and which has some data in it. So I will calculate region plan and call it for item, which is called emergency. Okay, so system is telling me here is some emergency. Why? What does it mean? So emergency means that basically there is some demand which is not covered before the starting date of the plan, which in my case was today. So it's saying that it's a problem. It's a mess. It could be data. It could be the fact that you don't have maintained data within the system. But emergency is something you should look at straight away and understand why this is happening. Yeah. So let me show you now. So I have emergency here. It says I need 30. I need to purchase 30, and I should have purchased it already. So why is system telling me this? So if I go to item availability by event, system will explain me that there are some sales orders which have dates in past. So 15 and 18th. And that's emergency. So you have some data which doesn't have cover and it's in past. So kind of system thinks, well, look at it first because there is a problem. Okay. What I've heard many times from the customers, yeah, we all delete them. We don't understand them, so we do delete them. So again, we can have too much or not enough in the end of the day. Okay, so there's the emergency. Let me show you the other one. The other one is exception. So exceptions are related to field which we can configure on the item card, and it's called safety stock. Yeah. So we have procedure on the planning system to specify what the safety stock is, and system always, when it will come to the moment that we are below safety stock, it will give us exception. And why exception? Just call it exception because you've said that you want to have always above and you're below. So you should look at it first and try to resolve that because some data indicates that you need it. Yeah, so let's have a look on the item. If we go to planning, there is lot for lot, and we can specify safety stock quantity. Yeah. So if you look at the data, what I've got, I have nothing, no stock, nothing. So if I run a planning system now, planning worksheets, yeah, if we go to calculate region plan, then I will run it only for exception item. What it will do, it will give me warning that there is an exception. And the reason for this exception is that I'm showing this on the right hand side. There is a safety stock quantity specified and we have nothing on stock. So system give me exception. Yeah. So that's exception. The next one is attention. So attention is where you can't make it. Your lead time is too long to meet customer's requirement. Yeah. So let's have a look on my next example. I will calculate region plan for my item, which is called attention. Let me run that. Okay, I'm just probably change some configuration on the item, but the idea is that your lead time specified on the item card is too long, and system is basically telling you if you want to have it by tomorrow, you should have purchased 3 days ago. And that's the attention which identifies that there is a problem and you should approach it first. Okay, so that was typical. Another problem. Houston, we have a problem. It's not, we ran out. So let's look at the last one I've prepared. And that's something called 80-20 rule. And basically what I'm seeing throughout the time is that small part of your portfolio is causing you the biggest problems. And I think this rule is probably applicable on life in general. I think you can find a meaning in any topic when you try to apply this rule. But key point here is that we should categorize and we should just make it not being a problem. We can build process around it, and that's my next input to the presentation. So we're coming to the planning process improvements. So how we can help, how we can improve the process, and I think we need to start with defining the process. Yeah. So what does it mean to define the process? BC is not a process. BC helps to create and shape and maintain the process. Yeah. So for instance, if you have supplier which always coming on Thursday, and you have cutoff times on Wednesday 3 p.m. So what you should do, you should build internal process that on Wednesday morning you run a plan only for this particular supplier. Yeah. So system gives you suggestions only to this supplier. So how do we do it? If we go back to the planning engine, I will go to prepare and calculate region plan. The whole logic and the whole knowledge or how do we implement the system is about how do we run the planning worksheet for right amount of data. So on the item card, we have a field called vendor number. So I can just put here vendor number, populate here vendor, then system will run a plan only for items which are assigned to this particular vendor. Okay, so the logic is, so we need to structure and define the process which will match your company expectations and which will give you data you need at the right point of time. And I can click the button and it gives me all items for a particular supplier. Then I can click another button and it creates PO, and then another button just sends it to the supplier by document delivery. So if we define the process and define your data correctly, then we can really have efficient process within BC, which can help you optimize inventory planning. So with this is the related thing where we need to categorize our products. And that's the absolutely key thing, because when I'm showing that I can run so we need to categorize your product. So when I'm showing that I can run a plan for particular vendor, I can do exactly the same and run it only for a particular item category. Yeah, so that's the key bit where you need to stratify and section your plan to cover all scenarios and your whole portfolio. Yeah, so if we look at the item categories, what we can see is something called parent-child structure, where we can define up to, I think, 50 levels of the categories. This is something new, I think, from 2018. It used to be item category code and product group code, so 2-level structure. This gives you much better options around how do we categorize. And that's the key for the planning, because if we categorize well, what we can then do next is we can define strategy per categories. So for instance, we have custom finished parts and they only produce when I have a sales order. And where this links to is that for every category, we can apply different process and different configuration, which can give us expected results for the inventory planning. So it's a determined strategy for categories. So break down your inventory, and define a strategy against that. Every category can have different configuration, which then gives you different results in the planning worksheets. So where I was saying in few screenshots before that there is some principle that 20% of products causing us 80% of problems. So let's design categories in that way that you're running these problematical items only, let's say, once a week, once a month, or whatever the process itself requires, but let's completely isolate them by item category to different runs. So that's the key bit of the data model, that if we categorize, then we can structure process around them, and we can potentially just leave these problematic items for somebody else or for different day. Okay, so let's think about determining strategy for categories. Next one is simulate scenarios. That's key as well. And point here being is that everything is changing in our normal life. So this will be happening in your system as well. Your suppliers are changing, different pack sizes. So it's all about simulating scenarios and continually optimizing and correcting the input. So kind of when I'm saying that, whenever I had some implementations with successful MRP implementation, it's always about the fact that it's about continuous improvement. You're never going to set it once and right. And because of the things I just mentioned, that things are changing regardless if it's system or life. I have here one quote, and it's if you delete the same line repeatedly, there is something wrong. And that's something I can really see on the customers where we don't understand these lines, so we ignore them, and we are back in the beginning. We run out, or we just have too much. So let's carry on with the presentation. Next planning process improvement I want to describe and show you is that you can save your filters and you can retrieve them on demand. It's something new. I think it's a few years when this has been introduced, but this is how I run a plan. And what I can do is I can predefine different filters here. So let me just go to select from full list. Let me create new combination of filters. Let's call it Monday purchasing run. Share it with all users. And then something called request form appears, and you can save your filters here. So on Monday, we run a plan only for vendor ABC, for instance. Save that. Yeah. And then when you run a plan, all you do is you just select from your predefined filters. So this is the way how we can structure and define the process within the system. On Monday, you run this. On Tuesday, you run that. On Wednesday, you run that. And in total, it will give you all you need every day. So that's something which is quite underestimated and not very often used, but this can bring a huge significant difference to your process. Okay, so next one is use planning worksheet batches. So typically you could have different people doing different things. That's why you would have different planning worksheet batches for different departments. Okay, so that was about the quick planning improvements. What I've got next is a list of some recent enhancements, which I want to quickly talk through. If I show you BC now, the biggest thing for me was the BOM and routine on the stack keeping unit card. So if we go to the stack keeping unit, let me just show you the screen. Yeah, units. Now just showing it on the screen. So I'm showing the stack keeping unit card, and on the replenishment tab, what we can see here is the routine number and BOM number. So what this means is that you could have different BOM based on location or based on the variant itself, which is something we were doing very often on the project basis, but finally this is something as a part of the product. So based on where the demand is recognized, it will then use correct routine. Okay, so next one is support for variance for demand forecast. Again, this was kind of limitation, as Matt mentioned during the keynote, which was causing not to use variance. So what is the variant? It's something which can be used to reduce number of items within your item list and create variations of it in the variant list. But newly you can specify sales plan for it. So this brings now variant onto the table for much more implementations than it used to be. Next one, non-inventory items. So that's something which has been introduced a few years ago. To be honest, what was first version wasn't too much usable, it was kind of useless because it didn't let you to use location codes with it. I haven't seen, to be honest, implementation without using locations. So that's now back into play, and non-inventory items have now much greater usage than it was before. Next one is the lot size added on the routine line. So you can newly now specify your runtime within operation against the lot size, against the batches. So it used to be that it's against the one. Now you can specify it against the whole lot. Okay, that's the recent BC enhancements. I have here last point for the presentation, and that's the visualization and integrations. What I'm meeting or facing quite often is that customers sometimes say, this is not enough what you're showing us. We need a system to specify what the reorder point should be, what the reorder quantity should be as well. And that's where the other type of software comes into play. And it's called inventory optimizers. So how that works, it's kind of type of software, same as ERP, and the output of this software could be fact that it will tell you what to set in here based on your inventory profile, based on your history, based on the predictions. But that's possible that if you would have requirements which are beyond what I have shown you, then we can integrate with another product, which can then populate what needs to be set there accordingly to your profile and accordingly to your history. Okay, last thing, Power BI visualization. So that's quite often thing where if I show you the planning worksheets, you could rightly say planning worksheets bring in noise and a lot of lines. So it's true, yes, but again, it's all about the structuring of the process and defining what the process is, what are the categories, and try to get to the point where it is manageable. And if you have 50 lines or 100, this is manageable on a daily basis. If you have thousands or tens of thousands, then obviously something is wrong, and we need to, or you need to think about what we're going to do with that. Should we just structure process better? Should we structure data better? Or should we introduce another tool? But again, this is something which is quite specific to customers. So the visualization, so if we have thousands or 5,000 of lines within the planning worksheets, it might be easier just to visualize the data instead of looking in the planning worksheets, then we could use some Power BI charts. So if I go to Power BI, I would recommend you guys just to have a look on some of our breakout sessions we have regarding Power BI. But if we go to Power BI, you can have any information in logic of charts, logic of schemes, where thousands of lines can be shown in one screen more sensibly based on what your expectation is. Okay, and that's I think that's kind of it. Okay, so if you don't have any questions, I will thank you for your time, and we might meet again soon.